Jake to be?
Good evening, everyone.
Come up.
Welcome to the May 3rd, 2016 Board of Selectmen, Highway Commission, and Cemetery Commission meeting. First order of business, rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We also like to welcome the FAA here tonight, who I believe had already opened their meeting. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman? Your meeting, you're already open?
We have not.
Oh, you haven't opened yet?
We have not.
What have you guys been doing here?
We'll open our meeting. Waiting on that decision.
First order of business is a request, a release of overlay fund from the Board of Assessors. Mr. Baltunas.
Board members, for the budget that's going to be voted at on town meeting on May 23rd, I'd request the board approve a transfer from the overlay fund in the amount of $91,000. The amount will be applied toward the operating budget, which at this time is balanced in totality without any use of reserves or any amounts being deferred to fall town meeting. And I'm pleased to report it, as a result of some excellent work by the school committee, we are in balance and we don't have any layoffs for the forthcoming year. So, but we do need this amount of money to balance our budget. And you're going to ask me what the balance in the overlay account is. It is $298,073.35, and the unaccounted for balance is $220,171.03, which means unaccounted means that amount is available.
It means what?
That amount is available or unencumbered, and we require $91,000 of that total to balance the budget.
Greg, just for public information, we actually put extra monies in that fund last year, realizing we would probably be using it this year, right?
We did. So we've been in the 2 years that I've been here, we've made a decision that we'll put money in the overlay account to cover any abatements that are approved by the Board of Assessors. But moreover, it gives us the opportunity to utilize it as an offset against the budget. In the past, what the town has done is the town's used either the stabilization fund or the or voted money from free cash in the fall. And I think that it's wise to get away from both of those practices and have our town budget set in totality at the town meeting in the spring.
Just for, once again, for the public, this is our second straight year of a balanced budget without using reserves, without using the stabilization fund.
Right, and it is, and so the balance is about $400,000, and we'll make a request to increase that to $500,000 come fall town meeting. Any questions on the budget while we're here? Because this is probably as good a time as any to.
Dave, he'd be so proud of us. So, Greg, would you like a motion in the?
Yeah, would.
Chair entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board of Selectmen request the sum of $91,000 to be released from the overlay account in order to be applied to the FY 2017 operating budget. Second.
Motion made by Mr. Marcy, second by Mr. Fox. Any further questions for the administrator? Hearing none, all in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thanks, Michelle.
Next up is a consideration of a ballot question at the request of the Chief of Police, and I got to be honest, this is the first I've heard of it.
Right, so just for introductory purposes, the chief approached me after the last meeting about, there was an article that was on the warrant for purchase of police cruisers, and you'll recall that we didn't have enough money to be able to accomplish that this year. So there was no additional article that was put in, but the chief had suggested inclusion of a ballot question, and I'll give him an opportunity to speak on that issue right now.
Chief.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I had a discussion, kind of a short-term thing, and we had a discussion with the town clerk and with the administrator and town accountant. I've been chief now over 13 years. Seems like every year that we're here, we have to struggle to replace police cruisers. That's been a constant thing all the time. And this year is no different. We're trying to replace 2 cars, and we have no money in the budget right now for either vehicle to be replaced. If we do get some money, it would be in the fall. Problem with that is by the time we get the funding secured and get the vehicle ordered, we probably wouldn't take delivery of it until sometime in February or March.
Thanks, Michelle.
And now we're back in the process again of having to get something else. We had gotten on a system a few years back where we could replace a vehicle a year, which would be helpful, but now we're starting to fall behind on that. So one of the thoughts I had was, instead of having to tap into other monies or other accounts or things along the way in order to pay for these cars that we need, I propose putting the question on the ballot for a total of $225,000 to use $45,000 a year for 5 years to buy one car per year. What that will do is secure funding via a debt exclusion and have the money in the budget so we can just get these vehicles one a year for the next 5 years and keep the fleet at a manageable level. This is something we need to get, and you see everything else too, as we're going to try to look what free cash we have available in the fall and try to spread that out in whatever meager ways. It's just something, it's an operational expense that we need to take care of. I'm just trying to find a more creative and palatable solution to do it. Checked with the treasurer and the assessor's office today to find out what an impact that would be. Really, on the average taxpayer, it's about $11 per year, so it's less than $1 a month would be the impact on that. I wanted to try to put it on at this time so it doesn't interfere with any other projects that are going, because I know we want a fire station project and things to go in the fall, so I didn't want anything to complicate the issue with that. I wanted to just make an opportunity to kind of try to get this problem taken care of at some point. So I can go over any questions with you or answer anything if you have anything.
Mr. Joseph.
3 years ago, and I think either 6 or 7 years ago, we approved a request from you to set up the purchase of cruisers on a rotating basis. And that was never done. And there have been 2 years since that first request, 6 or 7 years ago, that we've had to beg, borrow, and, well, I won't say steal, but beg, borrow, and transfer funds from other accounts inside and reduce some smaller accounts outside of the police budget just to fund this. You're talking $25,000 a year for a cruiser. Is that
45,000.
for 5 years.
Yes.
Well, it's best to have a plan that we approved twice before and never got in. And if we need to have a way of holding our feet to the budgetary fire, then I'm in favor of it.
Anybody else?
Could I add, Mr. Chairman, that if it doesn't say up to, I would have some problems with it. I would prefer to say up to $225,000 a year to fund cruisers for 5 years. And the reason for that is, if this year you don't need one, I know you won't purchase it, but it doesn't have to be spent. And if it's up to, that's fine. And if you find that you don't buy one year, and you need a four-wheel drive vehicle with some special equipment, whatever the case might be, you can take some of that money that was unspent and spend that in the other year if it goes over 45. So I'd rather have, I hope the ballot question says up to.
Well, it doesn't. So the ballot question actually doesn't make reference to any dollar amount, Paul, because as prescribed by Prop 2.5, a debt exclusion doesn't include a dollar amount, and I'll read what it says. This is if you were to vote it tonight. Question 1, shall the town of Dudley be allowed to exempt from the provisions of Prop 2.5, so-called, the amounts required to pay for a bond issued in order to purchase and equip 5 police cruisers over the next 5 fiscal years, commencing in fiscal year 2017, and then yes and no, and there's some additional language that's prescribed by statute. However, the article that's in the warrant does say $225,000.
Right.
And so you have the opportunity to tweak that number down if you so desire going into town meeting. But once town meeting votes, that amount will automatically be included within the debt exclusion question that comes before the voters.
So the town meeting will occur first, and
Correct.
then the debt exclusion.
Correct. So if you want to look at Article 19, that's in your packet.
Yep.
I think it's important since the public is here. I'll read it to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds the sum of $225,000 for purchase and equipping of 5 police cruisers over the next 5 fiscal years, commencing in fiscal year 2017, and authorize the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, and I emphasize that, to issue bonds or notes as may be necessary for the purposes therein, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7, that's borrowing authority, or any other enabling authority. However, said appropriation shall be contingent on the passage of a debt exclusion ballot question under so-called Proposition 2 1/2 as provided for in Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 21C, subsection K, or take any other action relative thereto. And I think it's important to note, it says that the borrowing can only take place as approved by the Board of Selectmen.
One quick follow-up. I know that we cannot increase a dollar figure on a warrant article. We can decrease it, or on the floor, if the warrant is already written to say that, we can amend it to say up to $225,000, explain that, and then the article would go as amended.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I would prefer to do that on the floor.
That's fine, and I think, anything else, all these purchases certainly are going to be done according to bid prices and invoices and all that stuff, so that information will be available. So if it's the preference at that time to borrow that exact dollar amount, you could do that as well.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Board members, we're kind of squeezed on timing, and I know that you may wonder why we have to do this tonight. The law says you have to decide ballot questions and vote the language not less than 35 days before the election. So count backwards from June 13th, we're right about now. So we don't have the opportunity to defer this thing for another week and have discussions about it. It's got to be voted by, I think, by the end of this week if you count back on it. So that's kind of the urgency and why it came up as quickly as it did.
I have no intention of doing anything but voting on it tonight. I'm sure the rest of the board's the same way.
Mr. Ruda?
So, Greg, what's your opinion on?
Yeah, I think it's something that probably can be addressed as part of the town's capital improvement plan in the fall without taking such a big bite out of the apple. I anticipate that the town's going to have sufficient free cash available at fall town meeting to be able to pay for it. And I'm always concerned about going to the voters time and time again to request overrides and exclusions. The public kind of looks at it, and they may not necessarily support future overrides or debt exclusions that may come up as a result. Just my feeling.
So, Mr. Chairman, what we're being asked to do tonight is to vote to allow this to appear on the town meeting warrant. Yeah, correct?
No, this is a ballot question.
Does
Yes.
it not have to go to
Request.
town meeting first?
Yes, there was already a warrant article submitted for purchase of police cruisers.
Didn't have this language.
And what we've done is we changed it from, I think, 2 cruisers to up to 5.
And is it too late to change the town meeting warrant?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so what are we being asked to vote on?
So
To
there's-
amend Article 19?
No, you have to vote. So in your packet, there should be sample ballot question.
So, yeah,
Language?
the motion is simply to allow a ballot question at June.
Right, and I have one additional legal issue that you need to consider. So putting a ballot question, a Prop 2.5 ballot question, requires a 2/3 vote.
At town meeting.
No, 2/3 of the board tonight. So 2/3.
So 3 out of 5.
No, do the math. I think it's 4 out of 5.
No, it's going to be 4 out of 5.
It's got to be 4 out of 5.
3 would only be 6.
Because if you read the law, it says it's got to be 2/3 on the debt exclusion question. And I don't know whether it's ever been explained to you in the past, but read the law, and the law says 2/3 of the Board of Selectmen must vote to approve any debt exclusion question that goes on the warrant. So that means you need 4 of 5 members.
So again, because maybe I'm not clear on it, Article 19 already exists, which is what we're talking about, but it's
Yes.
changing the number of cruises from
2
2 to 5
to 5.
and the spending amount.
Right. And what would happen if it didn't get approved, if you didn't vote to approve it, what we would do, I would recommend, is that we pass over Article 19 which means no action would be taken at spring town meeting, and then it would be deferred for action at the fall town meeting, and we'd consider it as part of the town's capital plan at that time.
So is this 2 votes? So we're changing Article 19, and then we're voting to put it on, make it a ballot question?
I think you should vote the ballot question first, and if the ballot question flies, then the article that's here is Article 19 is appropriate. If the ballot question doesn't fly, then I would ask you to pass over this article at the May town meeting and continue it for action at the fall town meeting. See, what we don't have is we don't have available funds to pay for 2 cruisers. See, that's what's kind of motivated this whole discussion, is we're balanced to the penny, so we don't have the amount of money that the chief had requested to purchase 2 cruisers. So if it doesn't get approved as a debt exclusion, it just has to go back and be considered in the fall.
But this warrant remains under consideration either way, right? Until we close it?
It does.
Okay. Are we all clear?
Well-
Except I absolutely want to hear from the FAA as well. So you only have 6 minutes to form an opinion.
Well, I'm going to let Mr. Fox speak first.
After listening to the chief and listening to everybody comment a little bit about this, one of the concerns I have is we obviously need cruisers. We can't function without cruisers. And for several years, we put the purchasing of cruisers off because there's never been enough available funds. The Capital Improvement Committee right now doesn't have any money. So I don't know where the money's going to come unless it comes from another resource. So I think, in all fairness to the chief, he's got an issue where he needs cruisers, and we've been in this issue before. There was one time I think we purchased 3 cruisers or 5 cruisers. And that
Many
was
years ago.
Many years ago, and that was a disaster because the cruisers were out of service and we were still paying for them.
In fact, we're still using one of them, a 2003. We're still using one right now.
Okay, so I think we're caught between a rock and a...
Well, I mean, through the chair, our job tonight is to allow people to take a vote on this. It's not to endorse,
Okay.
right? Am I right, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, in theory, but I mean, we always state our opinion, so we kind of have either up or down on it. But anyway, procedurally, we're just voting for allowing it.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just for information purposes, again, I've been at this for a long time. I've seen the same issues, and I understand, and the administrator says the same thing. We can wait till the fall and fund it with free cash. If somebody can say, hey, there's going to be $66,000 for you there in the fall to fund 2 cars, okay, I wouldn't be here doing this. But I know we're not going to have a lot of extra free cash. I just know that's not going to be the case. And whatever it is, too, if you see the budget we're doing, and even borrowing $91,000 from the overlay account to help offset things, that means a lot of things are going to be tight. There's going to be needs for money in other places. This is just something we need to do. And we're always called upon to try to find creative and new methods of doing something like this. This is a simple thing like that that's going to expire in a set period of time. It's not a permanent override or anything else of that nature, but it addresses an issue that we need to address. And we're always saying that we're short of revenue and we have to generate revenue somehow. This is a way to do something, I think, reasonably and conservative, while at the same time taking care of something that we have to do. I'm not asking to buy jet skis, I'm not asking to buy snowmobiles or horses or anything else like that. We're looking for cars. I just had to replace one motor in a car right now because the warranty shrink down, so that's about $5,000 for that one. Transmissions on all the cars are going, so the older they get, the more those go. That's about $2,300 a shot once those things happen. It's just to keep these vehicles fresh, up and running, and keep them replaced on a regular rotation basis.
Mr. Massey?
Well, my first, historically, as Jonathan just said, was we voted to put this in front of the voters and let them decide. But I don't. Again, we just saw this very recently here. So my thoughts in the moment are, I would really like to try to do this within the budget process, or, some sort of. I know, Chief, it's the free cash route isn't always the best route, but how many debt exclusions are we going to put in front of people? Right, we may have a big one for potential purchases of land or fire stations and stuff like that. I know debt exclusions are more palatable for people because they definitely go away. We have things coming off the tax rolls. We're almost done paying with this building, and the library's paid off. I think the ladder truck but, you know, I just hesitate, you know, just in more bites at the apple, as Greg said. I wish we had another way.
I wish we had another way, too. To be honest with you, I wish we did. I didn't want to have to be here.
No, I know, I understand, I know.
And I think the
And we know
problem,
we
the
need
problem
them.
is we don't have enough funds in this town to pay for the things we have to pay for. That's why I agree. We need a new fire station. You know, we need highway trucks. We need other vehicles in town. We need things that we have to do. We have to do business. We have to get
Yeah, I
the
know.
right equipment.
You do need
And so
that.
unfortunately, we have to go to the voters and say, look, here's what we need. We need this for this purpose. And I think the people in town have supported those things over the year when we bring the information to them and let them try to support it.
Yeah.
I see no problem with putting this forward on a ballot because, you know, all we do is ask. If the people say yes, terrific, it solves the problem. If they say no, we're no worse for wear than we were at the beginning. And we go
Yeah,
back
I'm
and try
not
to-
saying I wasn't going to vote to put it on the ballot. I mean, again, that's what we've done historically, Chief. I just, you know, there's always got to be one of us up here who sort of says, you know, let's think about this. I mean, I know you've been thinking about this, and this sort of, let's just kind of put it on this warrant, this ballot coming up in June. I mean, Greg, what's the status of, through the chair, you know, other sources of revenue? Like, I know we have some agreements. Any solar stuff? I know that's another whole.
We didn't,
No?
we didn't include any of those additional sources because they're not available.
Okay.
One of the solar things is tied up, so we're tight. We're tight and, you know, we're balanced, and I think the chief and I agree there's not a lot of money that's left for anything else at this point.
All right.
Oh, I could take the easy way out and say I'm going to vote no because administrator's recommendation, we pay him to lead us. But and not that $11 isn't the backbreaker by any stretch. But I think we have a bigger project coming down the pipe. It's equally, if not more important, as police cruisers. And I don't want to keep going back to the people saying it's only a little bit, it's only this much, only that much. And then I'm, like you say, be that one last straw that breaks the back. So I think it's a palatable amount. I certainly agree with that. I just hesitate to put it before the people because I know we're going to be coming back with a bigger purchase that we've been working on for 3, 4, 5 years. So
At least.
I'd like to hear from the FAA. Mr. Mayotte.
The only issue, I guess, with this would be kind of procedural. To amend a warrant article like this, I believe a capital improvement approved 2 vehicles to be looked at in the fall. If you change this to 5, capital improvement's going to have to look at this and approve that first. So I'm
Very
not sure if it can be done that, you know, can be put on a ballot like that.
Well, I think what happened with this is looking at it as one a year, so if you've already approved 2, that's one of those 2 that are there. So I don't think it changes anything that capital improvement has done, unless I'm missing something.
Just another procedural question, Greg. So can we actually ask the voters to buy something for 5 years? Is it usually the money is in for year 1? I don't know if that's just a straight override or if debt exclusion. Don't we actually have to budget for that exact purpose in future years?
Correct. So what we would do is.
But it doesn't, we don't have to. I mean, that's,
We would time each borrowing to occur at the time of the purchase of the
Okay.
vehicle. What we can't do is we can't borrow all the money up front, sit on it, and make money off of it.
okay.
So we are subject to the same rules as
Okay,
banks
that's
and
what I thought.
arbitrage. So we have to borrow in proximity to the actual purchase.
Other members of the FAA, Mr. LaPointe.
I don't think I can overstate the need for folks on the police department who I consider to have one of the more challenging jobs, not taking away from fire department or anyone else, the need to have the proper tools and equipment to do their job effectively. Whether or not the procedure is correct, I'm not sure. This getting voted down is another concern. What I'm wondering is how do we put together a plan, whether it's now, next year, over 5 years. If for 6 years he's been trying to do this and we haven't been able to financially, at what point do we do something?
We just got a car last year.
We
just
got a
one
car.
last year
We're
for-
getting cars. It's just not like replacing them as fast as he wants.
No, we've gotten them, yeah, we've gotten some, and we've gone through a process, but you can remember just 3 years ago, I bought one that was used. We went a couple of years without getting anything, and so, again, these kind of go down the line. And now it says, what I can see at this point is, I know how tight financially we are, and there's not going to be, I know if I walk in here and I say I want $66,000 in the fall, everybody's going to forget this conversation and say, well, we can't give you that, chief, but we can give you 25 and see what you can do with it. So that's where we're going to be at. I'm just trying to attack a problem and fix a problem that is going to be a recurring issue year after year after year, and I've seen it for 13 years. It's not been any different. We don't have a flush of money here that we can roll around in and do. I'm just trying to solve an issue.
So if I could, through the chair, excuse me, the urgency. What's the current condition of the fleet? Is there a major urgency for one of these vehicles that we're not able to fund? Is there grant money available? Are there, I guess I'm kind of at a loss as to understanding the need for the equipment. Sure. And then trying to figure out how, as a town, we collectively come together.
Sure. What happens is, for a few years ago, they phased out the Crown Victorias, so that's why those vehicles are going away. So we've switched to more SUVs, and we're looking at some of the new Interceptor packages and that are out there now. So there's different vehicles we're looking at. So a couple things. Those vehicles I don't think were made as well as some of the other ones before. Just about every one of those we've had a transmission issue on. They lowered the warranties that went from 100,000 miles down to about 60,000 miles. Lo and behold, 65, 70,000 miles, these cars are breaking down. So we're getting responsible now for all these costs that are incurred from there. These vehicles put on hard miles. I got one of my cars, cruiser number 101, that's probably the next one scheduled to get rotated out. Hope I could keep it going for a period of time. I got one sitting down right now waiting for a rebuilt motor because it blew the motor on it. It's about $5,000 right there on there. So these vehicles wear out and go over time. I said again, too, my plan to do 2 right now is to take mine that's about 8 years old, put it back down to replace that car that's a 2003. So that's going to stay in the fleet. It's got about 110,000 miles on it. Still got some serviceable time, but it's going to replace a car from 2003. That car was bought before I became police chief 13 years ago. So this is why we have to do something. I'm just looking at putting a plan together. So I'm not looking to buy 5 cars at once. I'm not looking to buy, revamp everything, but we need a plan in place to do it. And I know even just waiting till the fall now, problem with that is going to be, again, we set it back. And this is going to be another year almost, or 10 months, until we can get a car. And then we're going to be in the same process next spring where nothing will happen. And now we're going to move it forward again to the fall. Then we'll be going again down. So the cars that I would be looking to replace, probably won't be replaced until maybe June or July next year. And then the one that was scheduled to be replaced maybe next year is going to be the following year after that. So it just keeps getting behind.
Oh, Mr. Joseph.
2 of the last 3 vehicles we bought have either been reconditioned or used. Isn't that correct?
No, one of them was an unmarked car that we have that was at a bargain basement price because it was a leftover. So we got that one and we kept it stripped down and unmarked. The one before that was used.
The used one.
We bought an SUV. That would have been last year, I think it was. We took delivery of that, I believe, maybe in July, I think, of last year. So we had an SUV, then we had the unmarked car, the white car that we have out there, and then the year before that was the used vehicle.
All right. This is not complicated. Honest to goodness, it's not. But there needs to be a compromise. This is an unusual way of asking to have that money available in the budget during some periods over the next 5 years. I am in favor of them getting new vehicles, but we've never denied a request to put a ballot question in front of the people. We've never done that. To my memory, and that's 12 years. We've always let the people decide. My suggestion is that we have a ballot question that asks for the exemption to Prop 2.5 for the sum of $135,000 to be spent over the next 5 years for the purpose of purchasing police cruisers. Plain and simple. That allows one every other year for 3 years. It's more palatable. If the people say no, then we either change this article to something that is acceptable, Article 19, or we hold it off to the fall. If the people say yes, and they approve that ballot question worded in that way, we simply amend the warrant article to $135,000 to be up to $135,000 to be spent over the next 5 years.
So, through the chair, Greg, how quickly do we retire the debt on each vehicle?
5 years. 3 to 5 years. I prefer 3.
So it's an initial loan year 145. and 90 and so on and so on.
Correct, and the statute allows up to 5 years, but 3 is normally a better approach on vehicles.
So it'll take how long to replace, to pay off all 5 cars, if it plays out?
10 years?
Yeah, 10 years.
I mean, I think the chief makes a compelling argument that there really is no other way to get us into the correct rotation of replacing these vehicles, given the current circumstance, but, and I also agree with Mr. Joseph, I think we should put it on the ballot and let the people decide on it.
I have no problem as well, too, if you want to consider lowering the dollar amount, if you think that's more palatable. You know, we could do that, too. We can see what makes it work. Because we do have a cruiser fund, so maybe some money can be found in there. Or, again, any offsets could be done through capital improvement or whatever it is that makes it more palatable, if that's something you see. So we could probably lower it down to, because roughly right around now, we're paying about $40,000. I'm sure they'll be going up, so that's why we were figuring 45. But if you wanted to go to a lower amount, we could do that.
Mr. Siganovich?
Would you like a separate vote from us, or did you just want comments from us? I wasn't sure of what you
They should vote.
wanted from us.
However you want to handle it. You want to do a vote?
You folks want to make a motion? Anyone?
I agree that it should be put on the ballot.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone want to?
What's the motion?
The motion and a second is that we should put it on the ballot for the original amount that the chief
Aye,
requested.
good. Mr. Chairman,
Original amount?
Original amount?
I'm not going to move that. I'm, just so you know. They can take their vote, but I'm not going to move the original amount of 5 for 5. I'm going to move 3 for 135 over 5 years.
I agree with him.
Do you want to amend it?
Yes.
Do you want to second her amended? Okay. So she amended her motion to your amount, Mr. Joseph.
Okay, so
3 for 135,000.
up to $135,000, no, up to $135,000 for a period of 5 years, for the purpose of purchasing police cruisers, not a number, but just police cruisers.
So that could be 3, it could be 2, it could
Could
be
be 2.
4 if he's...
Yep, I mean, it could be 3 in a go-kart. Who knows?
So it's $135,000 for police vehicles over the next 5 years and eliminate the numbers.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Mr. Fox?
Well, they have a motion.
We have a motion and a second.
And you have
Anyone?
to,
Discussion?
did you amend the second?
Yeah.
Yeah, the second didn't
Okay.
You need-
As, I guess, liaison to the capital improvement committee, we've been trying to buy these police cruisers, as the chief knows. We've been approving these police cruisers, but we run into the budget problems. Again, we want this. We'd love to have these things. Unfortunately, town bylaw requires that the capital improvement committee votes on these prior to the purchase of these to get on the warrant. If it goes from 2 that we postpone to 5, the capital improvement is required to vote on that. So I just urge, because of that procedural motion, that the FAA votes no to that, to this motion.
Well, you know, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, there's a solution to that I'd be glad to address after we take a vote. Absolutely. There is a solution.
Do you have anything? Discussion over? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
All right?
4 to 1.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we permit a ballot question for the June 13th election, seeking $135,000 for debt exclusion for the purpose of purchasing police cruisers over the next 5 years.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any further discussion? Mr. Massey?
Again, just, I made my thoughts clear earlier. I mean, we've never not said to let the voters choose. The voters are very smart. You know, they know we need certain things, and we're very picky about what we do buy. And knowing that this board will only do that if we think it's in the best interest of them, so I'll support this. Putting it on the ballot.
Mr. Fox?
My last comment's going to be that if this were to pass and $135,000 is approved, that would mean that you would not request that the Capital Improvement Committee purchase 2 more cruisers.
No, well, what I think I would do is again, my plan still at this point is to replace 2 cars. This right now gets me 1 per year.
Okay, but you could withdraw your request at a
Right.
later date through the Capital Improvement Committee.
Well, I think it's still going to have to get addressed by capital improvement if I'm to understand. I think we still have to have it addressed with them.
Okay.
Again, my plan right now is to replace 2. This takes care of 1 of them. So I would probably still have to come back in the fall and say, I need to get that second one, unless we're going to use some of this money to buy 2.
Okay, that's
And then
fine.
use another one down the line. I mean, we could certainly, I think it's easier to address once you have the money in your pocket as opposed to
Yep.
dreaming about it right now.
Okay.
But I thank the board for this, and I apologize again for the hurriedness of this, but it was a kind of a late discussion that we had with the town clerk and the town administrator to try to get this rolling, so I appreciate you taking the time to discuss this.
Any further comments? Hearing none.
The number again? The number? Chief, I was a little confused by your last one.
$135,000.
$135,000.
How many vehicles?
$135,000,
How many vehicles?
5 years.
How many vehicles?
Vehicles.
Three.
They didn't list the number of vehicles?
We need to identify the number of vehicles because it needs to be included in the ballot question. We can't dance around it. We have to identify the number of vehicles to be purchased. You have to provide clarity in the ballot in terms of what you intend to use the money for.
Even
And
if we
just
say
as-
police cruisers and not the exact number?
You have to be precise,
All right, then it would have to be the 3.
and that's fine.
Yeah, that's enough.
Okay.
All clear?
We'll have to schedule that then. Then you'll have to schedule it through the chair, a meeting for the capital improvement to make it right.
That's after the fact.
True.
No further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
One opposed.
What's the vote?
4-1.
Okay. Opposition?
I could
Who
take
is
the
it?
easy with me.
Okay.
I thought you were going to lie.
That's fine.
I can take the easy way out and say it's Greg's recommendation. Carries a lot of weight with me,
Thank you.
but I just think we got more stuff coming.
I do, like, we've never, if someone asks, let the voters decide.
Oh, in all due respect too, Chief kind of touched on it. This was this is the first I heard of it was tonight. Like Paul likes to say, what's your phrase about your problem is not my problem, but you say it a little differently.
Yeah, it was a little quick.
Can I clarify the issue with capital improvement, just for a second?
Sure.
When the Board of Selectmen approved the orderly selling of tax title property, when Joanne Simsack and I were on the board and pushed that at that time, we indicated, and the board voted, that that money would be split between stabilization and capital purchases, 60-40, right? And I'm going to give Rich Carmignani credit. Even though we've got tax title property, he didn't want to sell it until the market improved to where he felt we could maximize a return. We brought in, through tax, we've had 2 years we had tax title sales, Rich? Twice? In those 2 years, we brought in, I think, just under $500,000. That's $500,000 that went to stabilization and capital purchases, that the people did not then have to fund those items. We also have a request now to set aside $75,000 to administer a program to do this. I'm opposed to that. I'm not going to vote for that. That's way too high a number. All right? I think that, and I know Rich will do it if he thinks the market is right and if this board instructs him to do so. But we need to start doing some more tax title property sales, and that money needs to be split 60-40 between stabilization, our rainy day fund, and the capital purchases. That will replenish, and it's a one-time infusion, but whatever the money is, it's not money we have to pull out of the budget to do so. So I'm going to ask folks to support that, all right? And let's get some tax title properties that have been on our books for quite a while. Let's get them either through an open public outcry bidding auction when we know there's more than one person interested, or through sealed bid if it's a limited piece like that little piece down behind between Rite Aid and the motorcycle shop.
Mr. Treasurer.
Mr. Chairman, what part of the agenda is this? I've sat through 2 minutes of this. I would have brought my version of this had I known this was going to be the main topic of discussion.
It's not a main topic, Rich. Plain and simple.
Excuse
It's
me.
not a main topic.
Through the chair, again.
It's not a main topic. He asked a question about how do we replenish the capital outlay.
Okay.
And I asked permission from the chair to tell him how we can replenish it.
Okay.
It's not the main topic.
I thought the question was the procedural, was going to be procedural.
That was my understanding as well.
Greg, we're not in choppy waters by doing this, right?
No, if you want to move on to the next agenda item, which is to vote and sign the Springtown meeting warrant, you would ask for clarification on a couple of articles. I know that there's some people here this evening representing at least one of the petition articles. The water department has provided you with some information on their articles. And you certainly, if you want to bring up any questions on Article number 4, which is Mr. Carmignani's article, that's your privilege.
Thanks, Michelle. Well, I also, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, we held our public hearing last Monday, right?
We did. So we had a advertised public hearing on the warrant. As Selectman met jointly with the FAA, and as a result, again, of that hearing, there are a couple of questions that came up where you wanted to hear from some of the petitioners on their requests, and you needed information on the water department article. We've addressed, to a great extent, all of the remaining articles that are on the warrant.
Right, and I certainly don't think the people here to debate Article 1, for example.
No.
So
I'm guessing there's other things that they might be interested in.
I'm going to allow, I just want to be fair to everybody. I'm going to allow some discussion, but we're not here to rehash CBA, Board of Health issues. We're just here to address.
Mr. Chairman, I also want to just point out that any zoning article that's on the warrant, and there's a couple of them, the planning board has a public hearing on May 11th at 7 p.m., and that's the proper forum for people to address their concerns about zoning changes.
Right.
It's at the planning board hearing.
Right, it's outside of our purview.
That's prescribed under law.
So I'm going to go in order, and I'm going to start, like you said, with Article 4. Does the town treasurer want to address that or no?
Start with 4. Rich?
Well, I don't think anybody's here for 1, 2, 3.
Okay. So those are all
No,
okay?
it's fine, we're all,
Okay.
Right? 1, 2, and 3 are kind of perfunctory. Right. Treasurer.
Good evening, Rich Carmignani, Treasurer Collector. Tax Title Revolving Fund. I have a smile when this comes up. I was president of the MCTA when this went into the Legislative Committee, and I really had my signature on it. So it took a little time for this to go through. What this is, it's a revolving fund for the legal fees. Mass General Law changed summer of 2003, the acts and resolves, and I can't quote the exact one. All monies used to expended in the collection of past due taxes, a tax that's gone to the point where the lien from the assessors has been perfected, a tax title. So if we go through and we have a filing in a land court, we use the attorney to go through and make a collection letter or notice, or you're paying money for title search, heirs, even probate work. Right now, there's a decent amount of money tied up in each one that has gone to litigation. What we're hoping to do with this is to have the same money be used over and over again. At the end of the day, someone owes 2-3 years' worth of taxes. They're required to pay the principal amount, the interest that is accrued so far, and all of the tax title fees. There's a statutory $3 fee for the preparation of the instrument of redemption, as well as a $75 recording fee. The attorneys do not work cheap, but they are very effective. So the idea that a redemption for a property with 2 or 3 years worth of headache involved in it might have $1,000 or $2,000 legal or recoverable component of it. The idea was that we, over the course of a few years, expend some money. When the property is redeemed, that money comes back, and it's sort of set aside for the next similar purpose, so that we're not constrained by $5,000 in the tax title treasurer's account, which really, if it's a budget line item, it's only good to be used for that one fiscal year. I also think it eliminates the habit of, and it might be frowned upon, in the event that I've expended money on legal fees and had that money come back, by the time that lawyer bill had come in, we usually pay out of that dollar amount that had been recovered. I think the DOR solves a big problem by supporting the passage of this, in that monies expended and recovered wouldn't replenish a budget line item, but rather stand alone and just be used throughout the course of the succeeding years. Does that make sense? Really, and it's land court legal fees, recording fees, everything associated with the advertising of the tax title. So really, has nothing to do with salaries, has nothing to do with the other expenses. We wouldn't be able to back out dollar amounts from here. And the $75,000 cap seems a lot, but really, if you have a few $1,000s tied up in one, really, if I would easily have half of that recoverable this year. So it's a decent amount of money that just seems to rotate around. I want to say we had $78,000 bill for a 6-month period.
Mr. Joseph?
Yeah, I'm in favor of a revolving account, absolutely positively. When this first showed up at our last meeting, in our first discussion on the budget, I asked, how is that figure arrived at? And at that time, Greg wasn't able to answer that question. And I said, and I'll say it again, that I'm opposed to a $75,000 chunk unless I know how we arrived at separating that money. So among the questions I would ask normally is, what have we spent in each of the years over the past, when do we have the first one, 6, 7 years ago?
No. I think you're confusing a few things. Okay. A sale of a tax title property would be different and separate from this tax title account.
No, I understand, Rich, that
Okay.
this is to get that straightened out so we can sell it.
No.
You said that tax
All right.
title, the search, right? The search, the attorneys, the land court.
If I could, when the property has been surrendered or in land court, meaning the owners of record have not come through and paid or done whatever they need to, the property is surrendered to the town of Dudley for unpaid real estate taxes. Okay? At that point, we're sort of into it for what we have in legal fees or uncollected taxes. Conversely, if someone comes in at the last minute and says, here it is, we'll pay
happened, yep.
thousands of dollars and we'll redeem it, that's where the recovered legal funds would go in. The thought was, in a few years, you would not have those dollars as a budgeted line item. Maybe you would have a smaller amount for those depending on what had been surrendered. But ultimately, you would eliminate the need for an annual budget line item, and you would just be able to work off of the revolving fund. And if I could go back to how much have we spent so far, the collector's side spent $14,000 going through for the taking, the advertising, and everything else. A tax lien is $75 for each one. I think I went through 100 of them. I want to say our tax title attorneys were close to $8,000, and I plan on matching that bill, if not exceeding it, for the end of the year. A great deal of the funds have been recovered. So to answer your question, close to 30.
A year?
30 a year.
Okay. And I think actually around close to the same page. If not, we're certainly in the same book, all right? All I'm saying is that I didn't want to vote for it because I thought 75,000 was high. But if we're spending, on average, 30,000, and that those are those representative averages, Rich, over the course of, say, 4, 5, 6 years? Does it pretty much average out to that?
Yes.
Okay, if that's the case, I have no problem at all with a revolving fund. It makes a great deal of sense. It makes 101% sense. But why 75,000?
I think that all of the liens that I had put on during the course of fiscal 2016 will not be redeemed by the end of the year. So I would imagine all of my 2012 tax liens are in motion, and we're working on the rest of the 2013s.
Okay.
And really, there's a method to that madness, and I don't want to be too wordy tonight. In the event we ever had a defect in the title of a 2012 tax taking, the statute of limitations would have expired for me to take any action on it. So at the very least, we need to have the title work done and have the tax title attorney say there is no defect with this title. And then you could hang on to it for 10 years, let it accrue the interest and be predatory, as opposed to moving it through. But really, at the end of the day, it's 3.5 years from the end of the fiscal year, which would be 2012, and then really the next year.
I have
So-
one final question. I know he's going to answer it honestly, and whatever you say, I'll accept that answer. All right? Here's the question. How much can you get by on under the plan of the revolving account, which I like very much? How much do you actually need comfortably, not excessively or safely, but how much do you need comfortably to get by on if it's less than 75,000 in the account? How much would it be?
Reasonably, you'd want 2 years. Some items have a wonderful recovery. I've put liens on in September, and I've had them redeemed in the last few months.
Okay.
So a decent amount goes through, and some of these are heirlooms.
It's not totally predictable.
I
That's
agree
clear.
with that
That's clear.
statement. I agree with that
So
statement.
if you can get by on 60, and I just think that's fair, and it still allows 15,000, because I know we'll be doing some tax title sales when all those processes get done, that's fine. 15,000 more we can put into capital outlay and stabilization. So I'm okay with that. I really am. Thanks.
For the administrator, too, the article's written to say up to 75. So if he only gets
Not
it
to
up to
exceed.
50,
And that's it.
No, the way I read this,
Well,
I
not to
don't think
exceed.
we're populating the revolving
You're not.
We're established.
70.
Establishing an
We're
account.
establishing
All
the
we're talking
account.
about here.
right, just to
So that the
deposit money.
first redemption that occurs after July 1st will populate it with the first dollars, so on and so forth. I will still have a 2017 budget line item to go through and expend. Any recoveries made in that year would go through and start to originally populate.
Right.
At some point, it'll reach the maximum, hopefully.
Okay, so we're sort of slowly filling the tank, and if we fill it to 25, 50, or 75, or in your case 60, I mean we're doing it at a very, very modest rate. I don't know as if we could identify the $15,000 that would go to something
No,
else.
no, that's just that's a theoretical figure. At some point, it would be 15,000 if we kept the maximum not to exceed 60,000 in any given year. That's all I'm saying, and I think it's a great idea. I really do. I honestly do.
Take a vote.
Somebody want to make a motion?
We need to,
Well, we can't.
Oh, no, we'll do it at the end. We don't,
Right.
not a motion on
For
the,
informational purposes.
okay.
Exactly.
That's right, sorry.
You can vote your positions at a later date. You don't need to do that tonight.
Right, right.
Good.
That information has been,
It's a good move, Rich.
Yeah.
It takes us off the hook to
Thank
have
you.
to fund it every year.
Rich.
And I'm just going to do a quick FYI. One of the things we asked at our last meeting was water department, sewer department was looking for funds. They gave us a 3-point bullet list. Not going to read the whole thing. They're going to do a water main replacement at Mill and Pine Street. They're going from a 10-inch to a 12-inch main, and it was installed before 1909. They're going to do new generators at Lakeview Ave Pump 1 and Luther Pump Station. They currently do not have a backup. And Lakeview Pump Station, replacement of a pump, motor and valves. So we'd asked the water and sewer to let us know what they were doing. And I think I speak on behalf of the board and the town. It's nice to see them loosening up the purse strings and allowing much-needed repairs to be done. I'm going to ask for the petitioners to come up, if they're present, that put the petition article in, that's denoted as Article 31, I believe.
Two articles. The first petition article is the right to farm bylaw.
Oh, the right,
Are we walking through
30.
this all again? or
30?
no?
yeah, we didn't,
Mr. Sullivan, before we go on, I hate to interrupt. It's still the same account number, sewer retained earnings with water retained earnings.
that was a question.
You worried about that at this point?
Yeah, we corrected it in the warrant.
Yeah,
It is?
Yep, the warrant's corrected.
Good note.
Okay,
The
never
warrant's
mind.
correct.
right, that was the question, was the water and sewer different retained. But we're not going to walk through the farm bylaw one, are we? I thought we just...
Well, the proponent is here, because if you want information on it, this is an opportunity to at least invite them up and at least introduce the article.
Oh, so I said Article 31.
There's two petitions. Cemetery,
30. I have two warrants.
30 is a petition article.
Sorry, I have two, the other one said 31.
Yeah, listen.
No, this one said 31.
Yeah,
for
I
the farm.
apologize, there should only be one in there. There shouldn't
I
have
have two.
31's a
I have
petition.
two.
30,
Right, but
the
30,
Dudley
31
right to
here was
farm
right to
bylaw.
farm. It's 30 on this one.
Yeah, it should be
I had two copies. It's all right.
30.
So is the petitioner for Article 30, Mr. Wheelock? You can come right to the command desk.
Corey's lap, it's okay. No, we're here.
Good evening. My name is Paul Wheelock, and I am president of the Dudley Conservation Land Trust. And from time to time, when we can, we like to work on farm and agriculture issues in the town of Dudley. And just a couple quick points. The town of Dudley has over 1,600 acres in APR property, and I'm not really sure how much is not an APR farm property. So we need to think about ways. Most of this property, this farmland, is in hay. We need to figure out ways to get this land to be more productive, whether it be livestock, vegetables, whatever. So a group of us members belong to NOFA, the Northeast Organic Farmers Association. When we attend their conference, we are just totally amazed at the amount of young people at these conferences. And these are individuals that are innovative, they have a high desire to farm, and they want to make a difference. So we feel as though we need to try to recruit these people to come to Dudley to make, all this farmland more productive. So in a sense, maybe this bylaw would send a message to them that the town of Dudley and the community would support them if they come to town. So I just want to give you a brief overview of the bylaw. If you read the initial part here, it encourages the pursuit of agriculture, promotes agricultural-based economic opportunities, and protects farmland within the town of Dudley by allowing agricultural use and related activities to function within minimal conflict with abutters and local agencies. So basically, that's what it does. If you're a neighbor, you really can't complain about the farmer is working on Sunday morning at 6 o'clock, or it has to be within reason also.
Correct.
Somebody blasting rocks at midnight with dynamite is not going to come within the bylaw. So,
Well, it's obviously a pretty comprehensive bylaw, Mr. Wheelock. I don't know who wrote it or where you guys got it from, but...
if you look at all the surrounding towns that have this bylaw, they're pretty much all the same.
Yeah.
So we're not reinventing the wheel here.
Paul, what other towns around us have it?
Oxford has one.
Oh, okay.
Sutton has one. Sturbridge has one. Rutland, Barry, Holland, That's just in our vicinity. If you look, Google it, 124 cities and towns have right to farm bylaws
In Massachusetts?
in Massachusetts.
124 out of
Third.
351.
So it's a
About a
little less
third.
than 50%. And 148 communities have agricultural commissions in their town also. So this is probably a baby step. So hopefully if things work out, we could form an agricultural commission in the future.
Well, I certainly appreciate you coming in, Paul, and I think this is something that the board would obviously wholeheartedly support. Mr. Joseph?
Yeah, would the land, would any of the land that the Conservation Trust owns, could that be opened up to this also? Or do you, or do
absolutely.
you have okay.
Absolutely.
I mean, anything that will not impinge on the rights of others and maintained, although it may seem like an anachronism, and maintain the bucolic nature of the town, I'm in favor of. Bucolic means rural, neat, kind of cool, you know?
Like we had a bucolic discussion before.
Any zoning?
I thought it was vitriolic, sorry.
Is there any zoning
That was
in
close.
town, residential?
No, this is, it would be agricultural.
I was
Well,
just
the-
thinking if I could get a
and it
camel,
doesn't-
that's all.
It doesn't come under like backyard farms or anything like that because, you know, a backyard farm probably wouldn't have a tractor or something as major as that.
Thank you.
All set?
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Well, I was just gonna get it, Paul.
Oh, wait a
because
sec.
I'd get some camels.
Remember that comic book that had that character, Indian named Bucolic
Section
Buffalo?
4.
He was kind of laid back.
It says, in the event of conflict between this bylaw and other town regulations, this bylaw shall take precedence. I was wondering if maybe able to expand upon that. So,
Oh, it's in section 4.
section 4, the first sentence. Anybody do anything about that?
Yeah.
Right.
Except where state law
Right. State-
establishes the priorities of bylaws. And then,
If there's a town regulation,
yeah, you may want to take a look at this and amend that on the floor, Paul. Because you don't want to
Don't want to lose
have
local
this be in
control.
conflict with any state laws.
Yep.
Well, like I said, I looked at 20 different town right to farm bylaws, and they all pretty much had that same provision in it.
But you might want to relook at it just to make sure you're covered.
Greg, I know council reviews and everything, or the moderators, a chance you can get a quick opinion before town meeting on that?
Yeah.
So just touch base with Greg.
All right.
Make sure you're in compliance.
Thank you.
Good job, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Call Mike.
The petitioner's here for the next article, next petition article. Would anybody like to discuss it?
Which one? The next one?
Next one, right?
31. Amend zoning bylaw about cemeteries.
Article 31?
And again, that will be addressed at the planning board meeting on May 11th
I know, I was going
at
to,
7 PM.
I was going to generally give somebody a chance.
Is it, Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
It is correct, though, that if this passes at the town meeting, it will not affect the current application that is before the ZBA and the Board of Health. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
It's my understanding of a zoning article, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, once it's published, it would prevent, nobody can rush in with a last-minute plan.
Correct,
So even, we may not adopt this till June 13th.
correct.
If somebody came in tomorrow and said, I want to put a cemetery, and it was in conflict with this posting, they wouldn't be able to do it upon passage of the bylaw.
That's right. Until it was either approved or disapproved by the Attorney
So
General.
that's the
By Attorney General.
protection.
Attorney General, if the Attorney General disapproves, then obviously, you remember that's the second step in all of
Right.
this.
But I mean,
Because it is not an existing bylaw until we receive the okay from the Attorney General. Is that
Right.
correct?
That's correct.
what your protection is, once you publish it, nobody can come in at the 23rd hour and try to sneak it past you. So nobody's here for that one. Does anybody have a general question on a selectman-sponsored article? It's not a public hearing, but I would accept a general question Seeing none. Any other articles that any Board of the Selectmen had questions on that we need answered?
Did we hold a few for?
I think we got all the information we wanted there, right?
Yeah, we did, and I do want to make a quick couple notes on some things that we've updated since the last meeting. So if you turn to Article 9, Personnel Board, the recommendation is that article be passed over. It changes the policy with regard to sick leave buyback. There's some additional information the Personnel Board requested. It's not yet available. It'll be available for the fall town meeting, so you'll likely see it back at that time.
So Article 9, when the time comes, we'll pass it over.
Pass over.
Article 8 as well, Greg?
Yep, Article 8 has traditionally been dealt with at the fall town meeting. The Board of Assessors did submit it with the hope that we would have available funds. They don't have an objection or problem that it's being deferred until fall.
Okay.
All the dollar amounts have been put into the budget, as we talked about earlier. Just trying to think if there's any additional updates that I have.
It's like we,
That's it.
So,
27.
yeah, we filled out that one a little more.
So that article's been filled out, but I'm guessing at some point the planning board needs to make a recommendation on that. Traditionally, they're the ones who submit those articles. We did not receive a request from the planning board. So I put this language here.
so, I know you had a discussion with the developer about providing an as-built plan. Has he done that?
I haven't seen it.
I know the highway superintendent had some questions concerning drainage issues, so we have no clarification on any of that.
No. Nope.
Have we made the requests for this information?
Yeah, we have, and the way this is worded, it says the recommendation we made at town meeting. So I know that you're going to have further discussion about this.
Okay.
Well,
I have a question.
as the superintendent pointed out at the last meeting, there were some things that needed to be done by January that
We
weren't
have a very
done.
stringent bylaw. We have a very stringent bylaw that's in place. This says all of this information is required in the month of January. So I can tell you we didn't have anything in the month of January.
So was there any, Greg, was there any discussion between the town, representative of the town, and the developer, either with yourself or the former planner, that some of these things could be waived or overlooked, or?
Not to my knowledge. Not that I can best recall.
So nobody can come forward at the 23rd hour and say, hey, wait a minute, we were told we didn't have to do this.
No, I mean, you can't really waive what's required in the bylaws, but I wanted to make sure it was put in there because the board had made a commitment that at least it would have an opportunity to get on the warrant. It's there. If the information is not correct, then it'll have to be addressed at another date and another time.
So,
Can we make one more push on getting the information required for this?
I was going to say, do we want to have the administrator attempt to contact the developer again and tell him
Yeah,
he's
I
under
think
the
so.
gun?
But don't we have to approve this tonight?
And we can pass it over with the
Yeah,
time.
we
can pass
can
it
always
over.
pass it over.
Yeah,
Lack
okay.
of information.
That's, I'm okay with that.
I'd make like
We need a
rec-
plan.
Make a record of it.
I had a question, Mr. Chairman, about, Chief, your solicitor's bylaw question. I was thinking about this the other night, and I get the intent and everything. We talked about, like, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, you know, political candidates and everything. What about, like, kids who want to do fundraiser for the school?
Well, as long as, I think, from my understanding of it, because I did some looking into it the last time, as long as the organization itself
29.
is a recognized organization through the state, so if they're doing it on behalf of the school, I believe that would be a recognized charitable organization. I think it would not allow the ones, just like Mr. Ruda suggested before, somebody decides to, on a whim, I'm going to go get money for, you know, a wounded person or a sick person, I'm just going to walk around and go
okay.
collecting funds. That's not that's not a recognized charity at that point.
It's just the charitable, kind of triggered it, you know.
Well, I think that's the thing, they're exempted
Yeah,
by that,
okay.
so,
Okay, just want to make sure they were covered under that.
yeah, it would exempt, because I think, provided nevertheless, the above requirements shall not apply to any political, charitable, or religious organizations duly chartered under the laws of the state or the federal government. Nor shall they apply to any person running for political office. So if the charity is a recognized charity and meets all the requirements of the state.
So the recognized charity being like, you know, Dudley Middle School, who was doing a fundraiser for.
Yeah, they're all organized, yeah,
Okay.
it's an organized charity
Right.
at that point, yeah. So
That was my
that's-
question.
That shouldn't be an issue. We certainly encourage all these people, as I said before, to register because, you know, part of the problem is some people go to a neighborhood and start knocking on doors and asking for money. We're gonna get a lot of calls about, hey, we got a strange car in the neighborhood doing whatever, so if we
Thought of
know about
another-
it, that
I
helps.
thought of another scenario too. I know, I have a sick and twisted mind where I actually
You
think
watching
about this
Criminal
stuff.
Minds?
No, my Anthony does that. I'm like, stop watching that.
CIS or?
No.
Signature.
Look, what about kids? I mean, a lot of kids don't do it anymore, but if they, you know, in the snow, it's snowing, and they want to go shovel their neighbors' driveways and make $5, $10, you know. What about that?
Well, they're shoveling the
Don't do
driveway.
that
Yeah, I think,
anymore,
yeah.
trust me.
I'd love to find them because I'll have them do some of mine too.
But I'm just want to.
No, but I think a difference right there is that if you're going around the neighborhood or you're doing something like that, I'm assuming somebody's not saying, hey, my hourly rate is $20 an hour or whatever. If somebody wants to give them something for helping out
It's
their
the
driveway.
door-to-door concept.
Yeah.
That's all.
I think the biggest thing this applies to is the companies, like we're getting the flood of companies coming in selling solar power, alarm systems,
Trust me.
you name it, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
And when we start looking at some of these people and start questioning some of the backgrounds, it's one thing we want to at least know who these people are, and if there's some question, we don't want them to be out soliciting. And then if they're denied by us, let them appeal to the board and let them get permission that way.
Okay.
Still a point.
Thanks, Chief.
I don't think we're going to be hassling the Girl Scouts selling cookies or anything like
I
that.
want to make sure we covered it.
Anybody who wants to shovel driveways, let me know, and I can
Yes,
get that arranged.
2 points, Chief.
Oh, yes.
The exempt organizations, religious, political, et cetera, still need to notify the town prior to canvassing?
No, technically, they're exempted, so they don't provide, it's not listed as a requirement by a bylaw.
What's this?
I think the recommendation I have personally is if somebody's going to be out doing that, to register anyway. But just let us know who you are, where you're going to be. That way we just know. So when we get phone calls about people in particular neighborhoods knocking on doors, we're at least aware of it. But people like that aren't going to be fined or anything else like that in accordance with the bylaw.
Understood. And it's happened in my neighborhood several times where they drop someone off, there's no vehicle, they just come walking
Right.
into the yard. Happens quite a bit. So my only other comment would be, I think the $20 fine isn't enough of a deterrent. I'd say 200, but
Wow.
it's my personal
I was
opinion.
thinking the same thing.
I just don't think it's enough. If I make one sale at one door for a couple grand, I'll pay the $20.
Yeah, but if the chief comes up and hauls you off,
Well, then I'm worried.
Well, a couple things, yeah, a couple things run into, yeah, actually, some cities and towns make this arrestable. That's the,
Yeah.
so, number one, if they're doing it, they're not allowed to do it, number one. And then number two, they're fined. So they get shut off from the business and they're not allowed to solicit.
and they can't come back either.
Yeah, they can't come back.
I have no problem with raising the fine, and I would ask you to consider it.
Well, I don't have a problem. I'd like to get the bylaw in, and then certainly,
Yeah, see how it works.
then we can bring it up. I think the problem's going to scare people away if we say $200, and just like the questions like Mr. Massey's raising, you know, oh my God, if I look at this and my daughter wants to go sell Girl Scout cookies, am I going to get $200 fine if I don't register with the police?
Well, I'm thinking of the Dudley. I'm thinking of the
Pay it
patrol.
off in cookies.
No, the Patrolmen's
cookies.
Association that makes the calls and then goes and collects the checks, you know, attached to people's doors.
That's
you know.
why we know who everybody
don't-
is and knows that, so.
Right.
Once you do a bylaw with dollar figures, you gotta go through the whole rigmarole and change it. I just as soon see it upped, not to 200, but I would like to see it upped so that it means business. $20 is nothing.
Chief, can you provide us some information before the town meeting, that maybe what surrounding towns or other towns have for a fee?
Yeah, I can look into that a little bit more.
And
I
I
think
know-
what we tried to do with this was, we tried to limit because most cities and towns, you have to get a license or a permit issued somewhere through the selectman's office or whatever it is, so we're trying to eliminate, having a
Michelle needs more.
issue, I mean, it's, again, issue formal licenses and permits and all that type of stuff, it becomes very cumbersome. So, we kind of did some hybrids of different communities, but I'll take a look at it.
Question for the town administrator?
Yes.
We could change on the floor, unless Steve chooses to change it, well, he can't now, but we could change that to a different dollar figure, fine.
You can amend it.
Yeah, you can amend
On
it
the floor.
upward because it's not an expenditure.
Right, on the floor.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I know we always say we don't want to compare ourselves to other towns, but something like this, I think, would be just a FYI.
Sure. Well, I think what you could do is you raise the fine to $45,000, and then we can buy a police cruiser every time. So listen, it's not okay.
Now that's outside the box, chief.
Yeah, but chief, what if you have to go up there, what if you go to arrest a guy that breaks down, you don't get
All
there?
in favor?
The guy gets away, the guy at the courthouse. All right, before I close discussion, I know I asked once before, I'm just going to ask again, does anybody briefly have a question on an article sponsored by the Board of Selectmen?
Maybe Article 20.
Seeing none, I'm going to stay,
Way up.
oh, wait a minute, come on, I looked right at you twice, you never even raised your hand.
Yes, Richard Raymond, Corbin Road, Dudley. Under Article 20, the board sponsoring Article 20, I got a question, has the board been presented with the option?
No. They have to come in, correct me if the process is, I'm wrong, Greg, they have to come in officially requesting us to relinquish the town's rights.
At some point.
Right.
And what really drives this is the town's legislative body meeting on May 23rd. We don't convene sessions of town. So what we need to do is get authority, and when that's presented, then the board will make a decision.
Right.
Because the question that I have, probably for you, Greg, and
Sir.
through the chair, is there's no dollar amount set here, and therefore, if this is to pass, how will the people know what the dollar amount is?
I think because correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, the way we worded it to the specific property, we'd be able to tailor the amount that we borrow or raise or appropriate to that one incident.
You would need a ballot
It,
question, too.
number one,
If it goes
if
to
I
the-
may, Steve?
Yep.
Okay, this is not guaranteed that we can do this. But if we can, we want to have the authority from the townspeople to do it. We want to be able to do it if that opportunity presents itself. We can't put a specific dollar because that handcuffs our ability to negotiate. All right, that's
Understood.
number two. And number three is, we don't want to get locked into a figure until we know what's available. We don't know that right now, right? We know the parcel is 55.1 acres, 18 acres. We need to know, do we have a right to buy it? If so, how procedurally does that have to go?
So this is only for the right to buy it, not for,
We have to go back to the people to get funding,
Okay.
if in fact this were to occur.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
People
also-
have to specifically allocate the amount of money
And
if
al-
this were to occur.
And also, don't forget, if it's a debt exclusion, not only does town meeting have to approve, it has to go to the ballot after that. So town meeting can unanimously vote this in, and just say we get a price in September. We still have to go to a ballot with that price so people know.
Still have to have the...
that all has to be done within certain timelines.
Right, but it's like
Absolutely.
was it 60 or 90 days from the time they present it?
September 15, for any article approved at the annual town meeting for a debt exclusion, you must act on it no later than September 15th. So there would need to be a ballot by September 15th for this to become ballot.
There'd also have to be an offering, wouldn't it?
Correct.
Right. They also have to come to us and say, we want to take it out of 61A, and we have a certain amount of time to respond.
120 days from the date of notice, the town needs to make its offer to purchase. That's what this article accomplishes. Then there's an additional 90-day period after that right is exercised to effectuate the transfer, to actually do the transaction.
So it may call for a special balloting question
Oh, sure.
Has to, yeah.
based on timeline?
If we borrow the money,
If we
yes.
debt exclude and borrow, yes. Because I'll be honest, we just had an excellent discussion on 45,000 here. We don't have, there's a rumor floating around that the town has the money already set aside. We do not have the money.
Well, I'm in favor of the chief to bring those fines up to 45,000. I think we'll raise the money all the way around. All
Yeah,
right.
so we're very heavily regulated on all of these schedules. If you heard it earlier tonight, it's so many percentages, so many days, and the law is very inflexible. If you use what I refer to as the 35-day rule, the Board of Selectmen has to vote to have a ballot question done 35 days before the election, so work back 35 days from September 15th. That's the date, the last date that the Selectmen would need to vote to call a special town meeting and put a article or a question on the ballot.
So the triggering point for a 61A would be based upon the offering
That's
Right.
exactly what it
from
is.
the owner, which they're mandated to do
After,
under 61A.
By the way, have they notified us that there is a purchase and sale agreement?
No?
not even that even.
So therefore, timing, okay, could be after the town meeting, timing could be after the June ballot.
It's not going to happen on the June ballot. It can't.
Unless it happened by next
It
Friday.
has to happen like this week.
Now,
Yeah.
like this week.
This week.
Like the Chiefs.
It's because of that 35-day rule.
You know,
It
and
says you have to have notice 35 days before the election.
This is the first step, right, Stephen?
yes, and this was preemptive by us too, just to make sure if we have an opportunity, it's what the people want to do, that we can do it. And I know there's some familiar faces that come to these meetings. We recently had a 61A, and the first thing their lawyer said was, can you waive the time frame because we want to close on the property? So we took a vote with, in the record, because I made the motion, that this is not the town's policy to waive any time frames. We're doing it on a one-case basis. So even if it wasn't this property, somebody else came before us and wanted to take it out of 61A and said, will you waive the time frame? We don't have to. We did it for that one, it was a small piece, like a acre and a half or something. They wanted to build a house. So if they come to us and say, you did it before, well, we specifically had read into the record and part of the motion,
Right.
just because you did it once don't mean you're going to do it every time.
You're not setting a precedent.
Correct.
Understood.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. You answered my question.
We all set with that? And I just want to state, for my opinion as a member of the Board of Selectmen and as a voter in the town of Dudley, obviously, I wholeheartedly support this article. I think it's the right thing to do if we get it offered to us. I think it's something the townspeople, I hope they support. I mean, it seems like it's a hot-button issue. And even if it gets, what do I always say? If it gets defeated, I'd rather have 5,000 people come and vote and lose than have 5 people show up and win.
Yep.
Yep.
It's a good first step for the town to exercise what we hope could be an option. May not be, but if it is, we want to have that ability to negotiate.
Selectmen comments.
Two quick things.
Mr. Joseph.
I would like to ask that we place on the agenda for the next meeting the issue of beavers and beaver dams. I recently was involved in a conversation between a resident and the highway superintendent, where the resident thought that the town could just breach beaver dams. And by state law, we can't. Yet, there's talk around town that there are some safety and health issues with some of the water that's building up as a result of beaver dams. So what I would like to do at our next meeting is to have a discussion and vote to authorize the town administrator to work with the Board of Health to identify if in fact there are any issues resulting, health or safety issues resulting from beaver dams. Because all Danny and his staff can do is clean out the pipes. They can't trap beavers, they can't kill beavers, they can't breach dams without that designation. That's all. The second thing is that thanks to Nichols College, I know that we've had a number of people from the town who have been volunteering at the fellowship meals across the street. You know, Peter, Lisa Berg, once she came, she can't stay away. She's there, been there every time. Ed and his wife were there this last time. Dean, even though he's not a resident of Dudley, he's going to be serving tomorrow night at 5 o'clock at the fellowship meal. And the good news is Nichols has come through. They are having their general manager of food service is coming to the meal tomorrow night, and then he's going to meet with the committee on Thursday and talk about helping St. Andrews run the second and fourth Wednesday meals for the needy and the homeless through June and July, because they were planning on stopping. So if that works out with Nichols, and we appreciate Dave Hebert even coming down and looking at it, thanks to President Susan and to Lynn Luby, then we'll be able to only have to take the month of August off, and we'll be able to provide meals, because we're up over 108, 110 people now, every time. We'll be able to do it in June and July also. So I want to thank Nichols for doing that. They're going to work it out, but I'm sure they'll try. Thank you.
Took the vote and sign out of order, so if you want to finish with comments, then we'll vote, or you rather push the vote first?
Vote.
Chair will entertain a motion to vote and sign the Springtown warrant.
Second.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board of Selectmen approve and sign the Springtown warrant for 2016 to be held on Monday, May 23rd, 2016.
Motion made.
Second.
Second by Mr. Fox. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Mr. Fox, Selectmen's comments.
All set.
Mr. Massey.
I'm all set, Steve.
Mr. Ruda.
All set.
I just got a couple of quick ones. As you heard that Greg alluded to, we have a balanced budget. I want to thank Baypath and Dudley Charlton. They didn't quite get as low as we wanted them to, but they got it low enough that we could balance. There were some strong words at the last meeting from a couple members, and I just want to thank Mr. Desto and his staff for a job well done.
And John and his staff.
Yeah, and over here too. Yeah, that's our town hall people doing what they have to do.
Absolutely.
I just want to, there's another little plug for the schools, even though we're not the school committee. I was at Worcester State University the other night for their academic awards, and they had over 4,000 graduates this year. 70 students were recognized, 5 were Shepherd Hill graduates, and 1 person won 2 awards. So technically 6 out of 70 were Dudley Charlton products at Worcester State. So another job well done for the schools.
Anybody for the FAA want to say anything?
Are we all good? We're all good? Comments?
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, just, if I could just mention a couple of things. There's a freshman student up at Shepherd Hill. He's a good friend of my son's, and he's the Boy Scout. And he's on a project to create a sign for Dudley.
Oh, yeah. Bailey, we know.
Oh, yeah.
Bailey came in front of us, yeah.
And I just learned today that I believe he got the grant for that. We do. So
Excellent.
I'll just pass that around if anybody wants to see kind of what the design is. It says "Welcome to Dudley" on the front of it, and on the back it says "Why are you leaving so fast?" Thank you for visiting. I'll pass it down.
That was such a cool idea.
I think it's going to be placed up by
We need him.
Dresser Hill.
Get some grant money.
Up there, so it's a big, beautiful wooden sign. So, just want to say thank you to Bailey Bowes for doing that. The only other thing I wanted to mention, it's kind of off the topic, but we met with the school board the other morning, and Senator Goby is going to be pushing for the 80% transportation reimbursement in her amendments. I think she has one amendment for 80% reimbursement. So it's kind of really important that that goes through, that she can get up to that, because that would really offset a lot of the school transportation budget. So I would urge everybody to call as many senators as you can and urge them to support her amendment. You can go to the Mass Senate website, and all their emails and all their phone numbers are there. So if you get a chance to do that, that would make a big impact in the school. Also, Senator Fatman is going to be proposing an amendment for special ed transportation reimbursement, which is another big line item for the school system. So it looks like he wants to get some reimbursement back for that. So he's going to be drafting that amendment. He's probably going to be looking for a letter of support. And I do urge in the future, when I get some more information on that, that maybe the FAA and the Board of Selectmen jointly write a letter of support for that. And I know the Charlton FAA and Board of Selectmen would also do that. So.
Yeah, no, seeing as my daughter rides one of those vans, I will wholeheartedly support that.
Did you see what Shrewsbury in this morning's paper charges every student for taking the bus to school? I wonder what kind of traffic jams they have at the schools. People avoiding those fees.
Rich, down?
That's it for me.
Any department head comments? Hearing none. Greg?
Nope.
Michelle?
Motion
Greg's gonna get
adjourned.
home and feed his pup.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. Third.
Thank you all for coming out. We'll see you all at the town meeting.
Adjourned.